They always looked down on us. Not openly, of course. The Galactic Council had their polished diplomatic etiquette, their smug little smiles, and their slick speeches about interspecies harmony. But behind closed doors, behind their holoscreens and thick-layered translations, we knew how they really saw Earth. A backwater. A barely civilized anomaly. Useful maybe for culture, music, and cheap labor, but certainly not a threat. Not in the grand scheme of things. They monitored us for 2 centuries, first with probes, then with hidden satellites, then finally with diplomatic envoys. They studied our wars, our politics, our religion, our history of self-destruction. They watched us tear ourselves apart and laughed. And when they finally stepped in to welcome us into the galactic community, we bowed our heads like grateful mutts. That was our first move. I sat in the back of the council chamber that day, wearing a plain black uniform. No medals, no stripes, no insignia. Just a dark patch on my shoulder that none of them recognized. That was intentional. My name doesn't matter. Not now. All that matters is what Earth did next. The chamber was an over-designed mess of arrogance, a dome of polished obsidian, starlight pouring in through energy-filtered glass, with alien species seated in massive arcs by importance. The Tisha with their scaled armor and triple spines sat high above, like self-appointed gods. The Malkuan with their psychic latticework hummed silently in judgment. And dozens of lesser species watched as Earth, or what they thought represented Earth, took the central podium. Our diplomat, a silver-tongued puppet with a fake smile, cleared his throat and began reciting the usual script. Thank you for welcoming us. We're humbled. We look forward to learning. You know the routine. It was everything they wanted to hear. Until it wasn't. Because somewhere between interstellar peace and mutual cooperation, the lights cut out. The council chamber dimmed in silence. A few seconds passed, barely long enough to raise suspicion, before the emergency fail-safes kicked in. The power flickered back. But when the screens returned, the background projection of the starlit galaxy had been replaced. By Earth, a live feed, not of a city, not of a nation, but of a facility buried 3 miles below Greenland's ice sheet, one none of them had ever detected. The feed zoomed in. Metal doors the size of skyscrapers were sliding open, slowly, like something massive was waking up. Gasps echoed across the chamber. A few members whispered in their own languages. Most stared in silence, unsure what they were seeing. The council speaker, an ancient reptilian fossil wrapped in ceremonial silk, growled into the translator, "What is this?" Our diplomat smiled for the first time. Not fake, not nervous, calm. He stepped away from the podium, looked directly into the eyes of the council speaker, and said, "This is what happens when you mistake silence for submission." The chamber erupted. Questions, threats, demands, warnings. One of the Tisha envoys even raised a plasma blade, as if anyone cared. But none of that mattered. Because while they panicked, Earth's reveal continued. The feed showed a series of cryo chambers. Inside them, not machines, not weapons, people, humans. Men, mostly, faces drawn, bodies scarred, hooked into neural gear. Soldiers that no war on Earth had ever claimed, lost to history, written off as MIA, KIA, gone, not gone. Stored, trained, modified, perfected. One of them opened his eyes on the feed. And somewhere across the galaxy, a listening post picked up an energy spike that didn't match any known technology in the Council's database. A weapon activation signature. From Earth. Back in the chamber, the Council speaker leaned forward, venom dripping from his jaw. "What have you done?" Our diplomat tilted his head slightly. That smug smile was gone now, replaced by something colder. Something you'll never be able to undo. The Council's panic didn't last long. That's the thing about predators. Even when they're cornered, they cling to the illusion of control. Within minutes, the chamber descended into damage control. Protocols snapped into place. Council guards in armored exosuits moved forward, plasma lances raised, eyes locking on Earth's delegation. Half the representatives wanted answers. The other half wanted blood. Our diplomat raised his hands slowly, not in surrender, just calm restraint. He spoke clearly, no fear in his voice. "We are not here to declare war," he said. "We are here to remove your illusion of superiority." That sent another ripple of anger through the room. "Then explain," spat a representative from the Varelian assembly, his voice distorted through a vocal amplifier embedded in his throat slit. "What is this weapon? What were those things on your feed?" Our man didn't flinch. "They're human, the best of us. Soldiers pulled from wars that never made your archives. Conflicts you never thought were worth analyzing. Each one hand-picked, frozen, studied, rebuilt. Not by machines, not by AI, but by other men. You wanted peace while keeping us weak. We wanted peace without staying ignorant." That wasn't the answer they wanted. The Tisha commander leaned in, eyes glowing dimly. "You violated interstellar genetic augmentation treaties." "You never let us sign them," the diplomat replied coolly. "Remember?" Silence. For years, Earth had been denied access to certain privileges within the Council. Technology patents, galactic security councils, long-range FTL infrastructure. They claimed it was because we were unstable, too young, too unpredictable. Now that same unpredictability stood right in front of them, breathing down their necks, and they realized too late that their gatekeeping had built something far worse than fear. It built patience and planning. The live feed behind our diplomat flickered. More chambers, dozens, then hundreds, each one containing a human soldier in deep freeze, encased in alloyed carbon shells marked only by symbols the Council's AI couldn't decrypt. No names, no records, just rows of slumbering gods. In one chamber, the soldier was staring directly into the feed, as if he knew someone was watching. His eyes weren't ordinary either. Not augmented, not glowing, just aware, like he saw through the tech itself. "I want this nonsense terminated," one of the Malkuans shrieked, his neural bands flaring with psionic interference. "Earth is under provisional observation. How did they hide this?" Simple. Earth never hid it from the Council. Earth hid it from everyone. That facility in Greenland? Built over 75 years ago. Not through military funding. Not through government collaboration. It was funded through disappearing corporate slush funds, private ventures that never existed on paper, mining operations that were declared failures, but kept their personnel on site. Every continent had contributed, not officially, not in agreement, but out of necessity. Because Earth knew this day would come. They watched how the Council moved, how they pacified planets. It was never through open conquest. No, they were too refined for that. It was through cultural erosion, quiet assimilation, introducing technology in exchange for obedience, disarming native militaries through peace talks, making systems dependent on galactic trade until they forgot how to produce on their own. By the time a species realized it had been colonized, it was already wearing a Council badge. Earth wasn't going to be another badge. I watched it all unfold from the back row, hands resting on my knees, waiting. My position in that chamber wasn't ceremonial. I wasn't security. I was the fail-safe. And now I knew we'd use it. The speaker pounded his staff on the dais, finally restoring a semblance of order. His voice came like thunder through the chamber. "Earth, You are to submit this facility to immediate inspection. If you refuse—" "Refuse?" our diplomat cut in. "We invited you here." Dead silence. "Those feeds," he continued, "they're not stolen. They're not leaks. They're live because we chose to reveal them, and not just to you." He looked upward, as if the sky above the dome would part. "They're broadcasting on every known frequency. Every corner of this galaxy is watching right now." The implications sank in. Every oppressed race, every enslaved system, every planet forced to kneel to the Council's order, they were all watching Earth pull back the curtain. This wasn't just a message, it was an invitation. The speaker's voice turned into a guttural snarl. "You are destabilizing the balance of intergalactic law. That is an act of war." "No," our man said. "It's a reminder. That balance was always an illusion. You kept order through fear. Now fear belongs to us." I felt the shift then. You can smell it, in a way. Like ozone after lightning, something primal. The chamber no longer belonged to the Council, not mentally, not morally. That tiny human in front of them had upended the psychological hierarchy of the entire galaxy. Not with weapons, with truth. And then came the second feed. This one wasn't from Earth. It was from orbit. A Council dreadnought, one of their oldest and most powerful warships, stationed near Jupiter for security purposes, had gone dark 5 minutes before the broadcast began. They thought it was a systems glitch, maybe a mutiny. It wasn't. The new feed showed the inside of the dreadnought's bridge. Every alien officer lay unconscious, some bleeding from ears, others with faces frozen in fear. No sign of forced entry, no battle, just silence. And standing at the center, one man, human, no suit, no armor, no weapons. He just stood there, eyes closed, as if listening to a melody no one else could hear. "Who is that?" the Council speaker hissed. Our diplomat glanced at the feed, then back at the speaker. "Subject 0. A whisper moved through the chamber like a knife. "He was never meant to wake up," the diplomat added quietly. "But you forced our hand." "Impossible," one of the elders spat. "No human could override dreadnought systems." "He didn't override them," I said finally, standing from the shadows. They all turned to face me. My boots echoed as I walked toward the center, the room tightening with unease. I didn't wear a uniform, just a black coat, scarred knuckles, a small implant just behind my ear. Not Council tech. Older. Human. Prototype, maybe. Subject 0 didn't take control of the dreadnought, I said calmly. He became it. A hologram appeared above us, a rotating model of the dreadnought's core. Energy signatures off the charts, fusion drives unstable, yet regulated, systems rerouted, language packs rewritten. The ship wasn't just occupied, it was bonded to one mind. "You don't understand," I said. "We didn't build weapons. We evolved. Every treaty you kept us from signing, every restriction you placed, we broke them in silence. You studied our past to predict our future, but you forgot the one thing that makes humanity dangerous." I stepped up to the podium and stared them down. "We don't accept cages. We learn from them." The speaker rose, trembling in fury. "This is madness. If you unleash that abomination, it's already unleashed," I said. The screen shifted. Subject 0 opened his eyes. No emotion, no rage, just precision. A pulse rippled through space, and a few seconds later, Council Command lost contact with 3 of its outer rim satellites. Gone. No debris, no warning, vaporized. It was a message, one that said, "We know where you live." Chaos erupted again. Evacuation orders, emergency summons. The chamber collapsed into fear and shouting, and through it all, we stood still. They didn't understand. Not really. Not yet. Earth had waited 100 years in silence. Let them mock us. Let them study us. Let them think we were weak. We watched, we documented, we copied everything they had. Then we made it better. And now we had sent our first emissary. Not a diplomat, not a warrior, but a ghost built in the dark corners of Earth's forgotten wars. A man forged not by peace treaties or alien tech, but by rage, by loyalty, by the unshakable human instinct to win when everything else fails. As the Council's guards began surrounding us, the diplomat simply nodded to me. It was time. A soft vibration hummed under my skin. The implant activated, and every screen in the chamber went black, except one. The last feed. It showed Earth from orbit. Not the cities, not the oceans, but the launch sites, 13 of them, one on each continent, each one older than the other, ancient, built before the Council even knew Earth had left its atmosphere, and now they were lighting up, not missiles, not warships, people, men, soldiers like Subject Zero, waking up, climbing into pods, and leaving Earth. They weren't going to war, they were going home, to the planets the Council had stolen, to the colonies Earth was banned from, to the systems that begged for help and got ignored. This wasn't a conquest, it was a reckoning. And Earth had finally decided to stop asking for permission. They thought we were bluffing. That's the beauty of fear. It clouds judgment. Even now, with their precious Council in chaos and Subject Zero standing silent at the helm of one of their own dreadnoughts, they still believed they could contain it. They thought Earth didn't have the numbers, didn't have the reach, didn't have the teeth. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The pods launched in silence. No big speeches, no declaration of war, just quiet departure. 13 launch platforms, each sending out 5 specialized strike teams, 65 soldiers, frozen in time, trained in secrecy, upgraded in ways the Council would never understand. We didn't send armies. We sent wolves into a sheepfold, and I was one of them. The pod ride was silent. That was by design. No communications, no distractions, just you, your breath, and the voice in your head telling you what needed to be done. My target was Norelius 3, a Council-run industrial world, supposedly liberated a century ago from its native species, the Vailari, peacefully integrated into the Trade Federation. That was the story, anyway. The truth? Forced labor, resource strip mining, native population relocated to underground preservation zones, slavery hidden behind bureaucracy and interstellar law. I had studied the archives. I'd seen what they did to the Vailari when they refused to convert to Council doctrine. Families erased, history burned, language forbidden. Norelius 3 was a shining example of what the Council called stability. I was going to turn it into a crater of remembrance. As my pod pierced the upper atmosphere, the ship's outer shell peeled off like a second skin, scattering in every direction. I free-dropped the last 2 kilometers, aiming for a ridge outside Sector 9, a supply station, heavily guarded but far from the capital. The first guard didn't hear me land. He heard the crunch of his neck when I grabbed him from behind. The second tried to raise his rifle. I broke his arm, then used the jagged bone to slice his throat open. Fast. Clean. Efficient. I didn't feel anything. That was the upgrade. Emotion dampeners activated on approach. I didn't want to feel mercy. I didn't want second thoughts. I wanted results. By the time the third guard stumbled on the bodies, I was already behind him. One hand crushed his throat, the other silenced his radio. 3 down. 50 to go. I moved through the station like a shadow, door by door, corridor by corridor, disabling lights, rerouting comms, uploading Earth's warning to every screen in the complex. This is not conquest. This is correction. Some begged, some fought. It didn't matter. You don't reason with collaborators. I left one alive, not out of mercy, but purpose. A Zarnin engineer, mid-ranking, thin-skinned and smarter than most. I bound his legs, shoved him against a console, and stared into his 3 eyes as I spoke. "Send a message to your capital," I said, pressing his hand to the comlink scanner. "Tell them Earth soldiers have returned what was stolen." He was shaking, mouth twitching. "You can't do this. This is Council." I shot his foot. He screamed, loudly. "I can," I said, "and I will." Before he passed out from shock, the message was sent. Norelius III wouldn't be the last, just the first to fall. Across the galaxy, it was the same story. Team Echo dropped into the slave factories of Krythex 9 and dismantled the power grid within 30 minutes, plunging the entire city into darkness before freeing 2 million enslaved laborers and executing their supervisors. Team Viper hijacked a council communications relay on Xanthor 2 and uploaded Earth's full archive. Every suppressed truth, every hidden war crime, every betrayal the council buried. It went viral in under 2 hours, triggering riots on 15 planets and collapses in 4 puppet governments. Subject 0? He didn't go anywhere. He just stayed on the dreadnought. And from orbit, he silenced the entire council fleet with a single signal burst. Ships shut down. Crew collapsed. Engines failed. 0 wasn't human anymore. Not completely. He was something more. Something the council didn't understand, because they never thought to combine what they feared most: human defiance and human intellect. What they called instability was what made us adaptable. What they labeled primitive emotion was what made us dangerous. What they thought was weakness was the very thing they could never replicate. Back in the council chamber, panic became paralysis. They still hadn't moved. They kept sending commands, deploying fleets, recalling forces. But the galaxy had changed in an instant. Earth didn't ask for seats at their table anymore. We flipped the table. And the truth was, they didn't have control. They never did. They only had the illusion of it, kept alive by obedience, polished by propaganda, enforced by compliant species who had everything to lose if they questioned authority. But humans? We never had that kind of leash. You give a man who's lived under boot his whole life one chance to fight back, and he'll bring the building down with his bare hands if he has to. That's what the council forgot. They thought humanity was a project. They forgot we were survivors. We were revenants. After securing Sector 9, I linked up with the others. 2 more pods had landed, one at the orbital elevator, the other near the Vylari ruins. The ruins were sacred, off-limits, guarded heavily. That's why we hit them next. I arrived to find Commander Hale standing in front of a smoking crater. 5 guards lay twitching in pools of plasma. His rifle still glowed from the last burst. "Doors open," he said. I stepped inside. The temple was half destroyed, some kind of marble mixed with synthetic reinforcement, ancient carvings covered in industrial panels, like they'd tried to erase the past with welders and metal sheets. We tore the panels off, revealed the truth. The murals showed the Vylari being slaughtered, not uplifted, not guided, erased. The council hadn't preserved this place, they buried it. I uploaded the footage to the main network, tagged it with every council symbol I could find, and watched as it spread like wildfire. Within hours, Vylari rebels, ones we hadn't even known existed, began emerging from caves and tunnels with weapons older than most galactic records. Makeshift guns, blades, homemade explosives, and they joined us. Not because we promised them peace, but because we promised something better. Justice. In 3 days, Earth's forces destabilized 4 major systems. In a week, 17 planetary governors had resigned or disappeared. In 2 weeks, the council stopped calling it a crisis and started calling it what it was. A revolution. They tried to spin it, claimed Earth had been corrupted, claimed we were rogue, violent, unpredictable. But every time they lied, another species saw the truth. Every time they blamed us, another planet broke free. And behind it all, Earth never said a word. No demands, no treaties, no peace offers. Just action. Swift, brutal, unapologetic, and yet not chaotic. We never hit civilian targets. We never bombed cities. We didn't need to. Our targets were always the same: council command centers, propaganda hubs, slave industries, war factories, collaborator networks. We didn't fight for dominance. We fought for balance. Because somewhere along the way, the Council forgot the most dangerous thing in the universe wasn't a black hole or an AI gone rogue. It was a man with a cause, and Earth had millions of them. Back on Norelius 3, I watched the last Council ship evacuate. Not destroyed, surrendered. The Zarnan engineer I'd shot survived. He was evacuated too. He'd lived to tell others what he saw. I stood on the ridge, rifle slung over my shoulder, armor cracked, blood dried on my gloves. Behind me, Velari children ran through fields that hadn't seen joy in a century. And I smiled, not because it was over, but because it had only just begun. Because the Council hadn't even seen what Earth was really hiding. Not Subject Zero. Not the soldiers, not the weapons, the will, the unbreakable, terrifying, absolutely pure will of a species that refused to kneel. They awoke something in us the moment they tried to leash us. Now they couldn't put it back in the cage. They didn't have a cage big enough anymore. The galaxy was unraveling. The Council still existed on paper. Their fleets still floated in formation. Their flags still waved over hollowed-out capitals. But none of it meant anything anymore. The illusion was broken. And no amount of doctrine, propaganda, or plasma-tipped diplomacy could put it back together. Their control was slipping planet by planet, system by system, heartbeat by heartbeat. And Earth hadn't even played its final card yet. The truth was, Subject Zero wasn't the secret. He was the signal. He was the alarm that told the rest of us it was time to wake up. I knew that from the moment I got the second message, an encrypted, pulse-coded transmission embedded into every feed we'd hijacked. It only activated once Earth had reached 50% disruption across the Council's primary regions. That meant our teams had done their job. We'd shattered the balance. And now? Now came the reckoning. The message was a single sentence. Unlock the holocode. Only a few of us knew what that meant. Fewer still had access. It wasn't in any government server or digital vault. It wasn't in space or underground. It wasn't anywhere they could find. It was inside us. Literally. They thought our upgrades were just mechanical, neurological, tactical. They never imagined Earth had embedded dormant AI protocols inside the soldiers themselves. Black-coded, self-contained systems cut off from the global net, waiting for one specific signal. When I activated mine, the pain almost knocked me unconscious. It started as a burn behind the eyes. Then the tremors came. My vision blurred. My skin pulsed with static. And then I heard it. A voice. Not mechanical, not alien. My own. Speaking back to me. Authorization accepted. Holo protocol initiated. Memories unlocked. It wasn't metaphorical. They had locked memories inside us. Entire lives. Entire histories. Simulations. Virtual time loops where we were trained in the art of total war. I remembered things that never happened in my timeline. Commanding resistance cells in dead cities. Surviving orbital bombardments. Assassinating warlords that were never born. Thousands of lives lived in minutes. Earth hadn't just trained us to fight. It taught us to lead, and it buried that knowledge until the moment it was needed. I dropped to my knees in the dust, heart racing, lungs screaming for air, brain buzzing with 1,000 strategies. And when it was over, I stood up, a different man, I remembered everything. The holocode didn't just activate in me. It activated in every one of us, every soldier Earth sent into the stars, from Subject Zero to the lowliest rifleman, now remembered entire wars that never happened, entire rebellions that never formed. But now they would. We knew how. We knew exactly how. That was the part the Council never planned for. They thought humanity's strength was in its rage, its unpredictability, its chaos. They were wrong. Our greatest weapon was pattern recognition, the ability to adapt, evolve, and repeat. We didn't just attack the Council. We began replacing it, planet by planet. We didn't tell liberated worlds to form governments. We showed them how. With blueprints already in our minds, with models we'd lived in simulations, we began organizing the galaxy from the ashes up, faster than the Council could react. One species at a time, one city at a time, we filled the power vacuum before it could collapse in on itself. Earth wasn't just destroying an empire. We were building something in its place. And we were doing it ruthlessly. The Council finally stopped pretending. On day 19, they declared Earth a hostile civilization under Extermination Protocol 9, a directive not used in 11,000 years. It bypassed diplomacy, skipped sanctions, ignored morality. Total annihilation. They sent the Apex fleet, 20 dreadnoughts, 80 cruisers, 500 auxiliary ships. Every vessel loaded with anti-planet munitions, fleet suppression AI, and killsat deployment units. They didn't come to negotiate. They came to burn Earth to ash. But they never reached us. They didn't even make it past Neptune. Because that's where the second secret was buried. Not beneath ice. Not under rock. Inside Neptune. They'd never noticed it. Never cared to look. Neptune was considered useless. Too far, too cold, too unstable. No strategic value. Perfect hiding place. The Apex fleet approached, and that's when Neptune blinked. Not the planet, the surface. It shimmered, then cracked. And what rose from it was not human. It was a machine. No, not even that. Something older, darker, beyond comprehension. They called it the Hollow Forge. A construct 1,000 kilometers wide, pulsing with blacklight energy, built from obsidian alloy and self-replicating carbon matter. Designed not for travel, but for absorption. The forge consumed the first 6 ships in seconds. Didn't fire, didn't launch interceptors, just pulled them in. Hulls twisted, power cores inverted. Everything was swallowed whole. Tech, personnel, AI, gone. The Apex fleet tried to scatter. Too late, the forge expanded. Like a virus, it didn't just defend. It rewrote. Every weapon they fired turned back on them. Torpedoes looped around. Lasers twisted in direction. The very laws of physics bent around the Hollow Forge's presence. Subject Zero spoke only once through the comm. You buried us under rules. We buried gods beneath your planets. The Forge was Earth's greatest secret, not a weapon. A harvest, a machine designed to consume alien tech and convert it into learning algorithms, absorbing, understanding, and then integrating it back into human advancement. For 80 years, it had slept beneath Neptune, feeding off Council probes, studying them, evolving. Now it was awake, and it was ours. I watched the footage on a stolen Council terminal inside Norelius III's central broadcast tower. The planet was ours now, fully. No resistance, no fleet. Just the hollow banner waving over every tower. I stared at the screen and felt no joy, no pride. Just clarity. The Council had tried to wipe us out. And in doing so, they had handed us exactly what we needed. A reason to stop holding back. We never wanted war. We never asked for domination. But now that we had it in our hands, we weren't going to play fair. We were going to finish it. The Hollow Protocol had awakened not just soldiers, but a design. A long-buried human blueprint. Not of ships, not of weapons, but of dominion. An entire philosophy of galactic restructuring based on ancient Earth war theory, a blend of insurgency, shadow governance, psychological warfare, and infrastructure poisoning. We didn't just tear down their fleets. We made their people question everything. In a galaxy built on lies, Earth had become the truth no one wanted to face. And that truth was now marching forward, unstoppable. Back on Earth, the skies were clear. Cities had gone quiet. Factories hummed. The people waited, not in fear, but focus. For the first time in centuries, Earth had no enemies on its surface, no foreign ships, no economic chains. And above them, the Hollow Forge circled silently, learning, waiting, preparing, not just for victory, for what came next. Because we knew the Council wasn't the top of the food chain. They never were. The Forge had revealed something when it activated. A signal buried in its memory, a warning from before the Council even existed. A signal from the original creators. Whoever they were, they had vanished. But their warning remained, and Earth had heard it. We were late to the stars, yes, but we were right on time for the real war, and this time we weren't coming with petitions or peace talks. We were coming with the ghosts of 1,000 simulations, and we weren't going to lose. The galaxy had changed. That much was obvious. In less than a month, Earth went from a mocked primitive backwater to the most feared force in known space. The Hollow Protocol had restructured everything. Council systems fell without resistance. Entire species that once played obedient began rising up, not because we gave them weapons, but because we gave them truth. The Hollow Forge, drifting silently above Earth, had become a symbol, a reminder. That Earth didn't need to conquer to rule. We just had to reveal what was real and let the lies burn. But I should have known peace wouldn't follow. Not yet. Because when you wake one sleeping empire, there's always another waiting just beyond the noise. And the noise was growing louder. It started as static in our comms. Random distortion. Frequencies corrupted. Ships reporting impossible sensor data. Stars appearing where they shouldn't be. Time behaving wrong. Small things. We thought it was Council sabotage. Maybe a virus. Some last gasp of resistance. It wasn't. The Forge found it first. It had been absorbing Council tech for decades, feeding off ships, satellites, AI cores. But when it began harvesting the Apex fleet's deepest archives, their ancient, classified knowledge, it found something buried even deeper. Not files, not coordinates, a signal. Older than the Council, older than their founders. Buried in the substructure of their earliest systems, as if someone had planted it there before they even began. We decoded part of it. They are watching. When the cage breaks, they will return. That's when the Hollow Forge stopped moving. It went completely still. No hum, no scans, no learning. Dormant, silent, like it was listening to something we couldn't hear. Subject 0 vanished that same hour. No trace, no signal, no logs. 1 minute he was commanding orbital fleets. The next, gone. Not captured, erased. I was summoned back to Earth. No debrief, no protocol, just a voice in my comm. Return. It's here. Earth had changed too. Since the Council fled, it felt colder. Not physically, but spiritually. Like the air had shifted. The sky looked too clear, too perfect. The clouds didn't move right. Everyone noticed it. No one said it. The hollow banner still flew, and from orbit the Forge still loomed, now quiet, now inert. But something deeper was wrong. And then the storms came, not lightning, not wind, something else, a black shimmer in the sky, visible only on infrared. It wasn't natural, it wasn't weather, it was pressure. Something pressing on the atmosphere from above, but from nowhere at all. It didn't show on sensors, but you could feel it. Our tech began to fail. Neural links glitched. Our eye went silent. Communications dropped across long-range bands. Soldiers began reporting hallucinations. Not just visions, memories they didn't live. I started remembering lives I hadn't simulated. Names I'd never known. Places that didn't exist. Battles in burning cities on worlds that weren't charted. We thought it was a malfunction in the holo code. We were wrong. They were messages from whatever had been watching the whole time. I was escorted to Black Vault 7, a facility buried in the Andes, so deep it needed gravity stabilizers to keep the tunnels intact. Only holo veterans were permitted access. It wasn't just a military base, it was where the holo protocol had been written. The walls were lined with neuroreactive alloy. Security drones tracked every movement. The lights flickered when I passed. And waiting inside was someone I hadn't seen since the beginning. Director Rylan. His face was older, pale, scarred around one eye. He had been the original overseer of the Holo Project, back before Earth even had a seat at the Council's guest table. "You know what this is, don't you?" I asked him. He nodded once, slowly. "We thought the Council was the Empire, the beast," he said. "But they were just tenants. Someone else built the galaxy, and now they've noticed us." He turned the screen toward me. It wasn't a live feed. It was a scan, from deep space, a system far beyond Council reach. Not mapped, not colonized. A dark sector wrapped in pulsar storms and gravity wells. Impossible to navigate, and yet something was moving through it. Something huge, bigger than anything we'd seen, thousands of kilometers wide, no propulsion, no energy signature, just mass, raw, endless, ancient. It wasn't a ship, it was a structure built into an asteroid field, with spires like bones, lights like eyes, and geometry that looked wrong. Like it had been grown, not built. And worse, it was moving. Slowly, deliberately, toward the Holo Forge. "This is where the Council came from," Rylan said. "Not their homeworld, their origin. They don't remember it. They were made, just like us. Only difference is, they forgot their creators." "And we just woke them up," I whispered. Rylan looked me dead in the eye. "They've been watching Earth since before we knew what stars were." That was when the Holo Forge lit up again. A black pulse. No warning, no command. And then it spoke, not through speakers, but into our minds. All of us. "They are inbound. I will hold. You must run." The Holo Forge wasn't a weapon. It was a lock, a fail-safe, built not by Earth, but for Earth. The signal we found inside Council tech? That wasn't a trap. It was a breadcrumb trail leading back to the real creators, the ones who'd shaped the galaxy, seeded its rulers, and then disappeared. Not gods, just architects, and the Forge had been keeping them out. Until we woke it up. Until we broadcasted its existence across the stars. And now, they were coming to reclaim what was theirs. Only we weren't going to let them. The Holo soldiers, the first wave, began to regroup. Subject 0 hadn't vanished. He'd been taken, or worse, called back. He was the key, and now they wanted him, or us. Maybe both. It didn't matter, because Earth had already decided. We weren't running. We were going to answer. Rylan looked at me one last time before the launch. "This is what the Holo Protocol was really for," he said. "Not the Council, not the rebellion. This. The war after the war." "How long do we have?" I asked. He didn't answer. That told me everything, so I suited up, hollow armor fully synced, neural net fully restored, no emotion dampeners, no limiters. I wanted to feel this one, because whatever we were about to fight, it wasn't a race, it wasn't an empire, it was the builders, and they hadn't designed the universe to be shared. But Earth? We never asked for permission. We survived plague, war, genocide, collapse. We rebuilt from ashes every time. And if these things wanted to wipe the slate clean, then we'd carve our message into the void with blood and steel. Humanity does not go quietly. Not to the Council, not to the stars, not to the gods that made them. They said the builders shaped the stars. Now they were coming back to erase what they missed. The Hollow Forge sent out a warning pulse, one that reached not just Earth, but every liberated world under our banner. The message was clear, broadcast in every known language. What comes is not conquerable. Only defiance delays the end. We didn't panic. We mobilized. It wasn't bravery, not some dramatic last-stand moment. It was instinct. Earth never bowed. Not when the Council stripped our rights. Not when we were mocked, ignored, watched like rats behind glass. And we weren't going to start now, not even in the face of galactic extermination. I stood on the orbital platform above Earth, staring at the Hollow Forge as it pulsed like a heartbeat. Black and silver, silent, but alive. It was preparing for something, charging. Its surface was shifting, reorganizing, new panels sliding into place, old ones shedding like skin. It looked like a machine becoming something else, something not made for this universe, and we had no idea what it would become once it finished. Behind me, the platform crew was scrambling, coordinating fleets, uploading command trees, preparing Earth's last wave, not a fleet, not a military formation, a migration. The Earth exodus wasn't evacuation. It wasn't surrender. It was spread. If Earth fell, humanity wouldn't. That was the plan. 10,000 cryo ships, modified FTL, protected by hollow veterans, piloted by neural-linked soldiers. Each ship carried colonists, technicians, builders, children, DNA banks, libraries, a backup of humanity. The Forge would buy us time. The veterans would hold the front. And I had a different job. My name was now on the directive. First contact, builder incursion. I was to lead a vanguard into the dark sector, the uncharted space where the anomaly was coming from. Not to attack, not even to engage, just to look and return with the truth. We launched in silence. The dark sector didn't exist on any galactic map. That wasn't an oversight. It was erased. Every probe that entered never returned. Every ship that drifted too close lost navigation. Council archives labeled it the Void Wound. No stars, no planets, just swirling clouds of anti-light and broken gravitational laws. We went anyway. There were 5 of us. All Hollow veterans, each one handpicked for one reason. We'd survived the Hollow Code activation. We remembered more lives than our bodies had lived. We carried lessons from timelines that never existed, wars that hadn't happened yet. In the simulations, we died facing things we couldn't explain. We learned, adapted. Now those dreams were walking toward us in real space. My ship, the Red Bastion, cracked FTL near the edge of the sector. It held position in the event horizon of a failed star, a place where light bent into spirals and space distorted around itself. That's when the sensors began to scream. There was no life, no heat, no mass, just presence, a thrum in the hull, like the ship knew it was being watched. The others drifted into formation. Each ship linked into our neural net. We pushed in. The stars disappeared behind us. And then we saw it. No camera recorded it. No scanner processed it. We saw it in our minds. A shape so massive it didn't move. It simply was. Part architecture, part nightmare. like a cathedral built by minds that never feared death, never considered emotion, never drew a line between flesh and machine. It wasn't flying. It was growing. A city made of dark metal and void glass, with towers that pulsed like veins. And from its center, a face, not literal, not formed of flesh, but every one of us saw it the same, a shape in the black, watching, waiting, judging. And then it spoke. But not in words, in memories. It flooded us, images, feelings, timelines that unraveled and rewound. We saw Earth destroyed 100 different ways, council fleets reduced to ash, galaxies split like fruit. We saw the builders remaking reality from the ruins. And then, we saw the truth. They were not gods, they were engineers. They had seeded the galaxy with genetic experiments, built species as tools, as toys, as simulations of their own past. The Council were just a failed build, obedient, efficient, predictable. Humanity? We were a mutation, something they didn't program, something that evolved outside the simulation. We were the virus, and they were coming to delete us. The Forge wasn't our invention, it was their firewall, broken, outdated. And now that we'd activated it, we'd triggered the cleanup protocol. We pulled back, hard, FTL failed, power surged. One of our ships vanished in a blink, no explosion, just gone. I ordered the others to scatter. We couldn't fight. Not yet. We needed to return, to warn. We arrived back weeks later. Our clocks said hours. Earth was no longer the same. The hollow forge had changed shape. It now resembled a ring, orbiting the planet like a second moon. Beneath it, Earth's skies shimmered with defensive netting, a global shield powered by the forge's core. Subject 0 had returned. Or something wearing his face. He was no longer tied to a body. His consciousness existed in every hollow-linked system now, a guiding presence, colder than before. Focused, calculated. He spoke to me directly when I landed. You saw it. They are not our creators. They are our end. Can we stop them? I asked. But we can teach them fear. That was the new mission. Not survival. Retaliation. We gathered every hollow soldier, every AI, every liberated species that dared to defy the Council, and we prepared the galaxy's last war. The final stand wasn't going to be defensive, it was going to be surgical. We were going into builder space, into their temples, their machines, their thought forges and quantum memory vaults. Not to destroy them, but to corrupt them, to make them see what they made wrong, to inject human defiance directly into their code. One scream, one scar, one memory at a time. Because Earth's power was never about weapons. It was about refusal. We refused to be programmed. We refused to follow the script. We were the glitch, the unkillable error. And now? Now we were going to break their simulation from the inside out. We didn't hold a ceremony. No speeches, no cheers, no final words. Just silence. Because everyone knew what this was now. Not a rebellion. Not a liberation. This was a hunt. And the prey was bigger than anything the galaxy had ever dared to imagine. The builders weren't conquerors. They were cleansers, architects of sterilized existence. They didn't fight wars. They erased problems. Erasure not through bloodshed, but by rewriting reality to exclude the threat entirely. And in their eyes, humanity wasn't a rival. We were a mistake. A variable that had evolved outside their predictions. And so Earth, insignificant Earth, had become their most urgent threat. But the builders made the same mistake the Council did. They underestimated the one force that could break even gods. A vengeful, intelligent man with nothing left to lose. And now they'd triggered a war with millions of them. We launched from the hollow forge. Not ships in the traditional sense. Hollow drop cores, black as night meteors built for one thing. Penetration. No engines, no weapons, just a hard shell wrapped around a single pilot and a seed of Earth's neural plague. the anti-simulation code developed from the corrupted Hollow Protocol. Our mission wasn't to blow up builder structures. We were going to infect them, twist their memory cores, rewrite their logic, make their own perfection turn on itself. We were going to make them human, and then let them suffer for it. My team was designated Spear Point 1. First strike, deepest dive. No return protocol. We were going straight into the builder stronghold, the one we'd seen in the Mind Burst scan. The Citadel of Reclamation. A structure older than any star system, built into the folds of reality where time bled sideways and gravity forgot how to behave. If the builders had a brain, this was it. We weren't going to destroy it. We were going to reprogram it. The drop took 17 seconds. From light to dark, from silence to the static hum of dimensions folding in on themselves. And then we hit. The drop core smashed through layers of builder alloy that shouldn't have broken. It burned, it warped, but it broke. Because we'd brought something they hadn't expected. Pain. The core cracked open and I emerged, suit scorched, weapons hot, memory thread screaming in my spine. My armor wasn't standard anymore. It had grown. Adapted from builder samples during our last retreat. It looked like obsidian fused with bone. Because it was. We had begun building our version of their tech. More violent, more raw, more personal. The Citadel was alive. Its walls pulsed with light, and each breath I took echoed back with alien timing. There were no guards, no resistance. They didn't think we could get here. That was the first rule they forgot. Humans don't stay in their lane. We crash through it. We split into strike pairs. I was with Cray, a former ground commander from Earth's Eurasian sector, hollow-scarred, voice gone from an earlier battle, replaced by a subvocal processor wired to his jawbone. He was silent, efficient, brutal, perfect. We moved through the halls, each step syncing with the virus in our neural net. Every second we walked, we transmitted instability through the builder core, like bleeding poison into a machine made of thought and steel. Soon, the walls began to shift. Not structurally, emotionally. They didn't understand emotion. But they felt it. Rage, grief, hope, fear. We bled it into their logic. The builders operated on pattern recognition, not reaction. So we gave them patterns they couldn't comprehend. Loss, regret, spite. Those weren't threats, they were contagions, and the deeper we got, the worse it became. The Citadel started remembering things it shouldn't. Images of burning cities, crying children, soldiers screaming names that didn't exist in builder vocabulary, memories of Earth's darkest moments, wars we lost, families we buried. We gave the Citadel trauma, and it began to stutter. Systems flickered. Logic paths closed, doorways collapsed into themselves. We weren't just corrupting a machine. We were making it relive something it was never built to feel. Failure. That's when they came. Builder sentinels, 8 of them. Floating. Faceless. Wrapped in shimmering armor that flickered between dimensions. They didn't walk. They descended. I opened fire without hesitation. Hollow pulse rounds mixed with anti-neural spikes. 3 of them flickered out, but the others moved faster than we could track. One reached Cray. He didn't scream, just turned his shoulder into the strike and rammed a compression grenade into its core. He took it down with him. I watched them vanish in a flash of impossible light, Cray's last words echoing in my comm. Glitch them to hell. I ran, not out of fear, out of purpose, because we were close, so close. The Citadel core was a cathedral of madness, a spire that reached into the sky, or space, or something beyond both. Around it, builder code danced like light trapped in water, and at the center, Subject 0, or what remained of him. He was plugged directly into the builder stream, arms out, head back, floating like a martyr in digital chains. His eyes glowed black. His chest was cracked open but not bleeding, transmitting. He turned toward me, not physically. His presence shifted. "You came." "You led us here," I said. "I became the invitation," he replied. The builders had taken him. Then they learned the cost of touching what they didn't understand. Zero had opened their mind, then torn it apart from the inside. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. He needed the payload. The final virus. I stepped forward and uploaded it from my chest core. A single line of corrupted Earth code, encoded in neural instinct. This pain is permanent. Once injected, it couldn't be undone. Not just a virus, a curse. A replication of humanity's darkest lesson. You can't fix what you chose to break. The citadel began to scream. Walls cracked. Light shattered. The builder sentinels vanished, as if erased from their own existence. The entire structure started to fold inward. Not collapse, implode, into thought, into memory, into guilt. The last thing I saw was Zero smiling. Now they remember what they tried to forget. Then everything turned black. I woke up 3 days later on a hollow medical carrier. Earth had survived. The forge was still in orbit. And the citadel? Gone. Not destroyed. Deleted. The builders didn't retaliate. They didn't send reinforcements. They just went silent. Because we had done what no species ever had. We'd made them feel something they didn't have a word for. And we had survived. Earth's people would never know all of it. The real war. The thoughts we poisoned. The feelings we forced into creatures that lived beyond time. But they didn't need to. Because the builders weren't gods anymore. They were scared architects hiding behind old code. And Earth? Earth was now something else entirely. Not just a world. Not just a species. A corruption. A beautiful, violent, uncontrollable error in the grand design. And in a universe of perfection. We had just become its only flaw. The builders were gone. Not dead. Just silent. Like the last breath of a ghost, vanishing into the void it once called home. No more pulses from their citadels, no activity from their machines. The structure we corrupted had vanished from real space. Deleted. Folded into a corner of the galaxy, where nothing else dared to exist. That silence didn't feel like victory. It felt like the kind of quiet that comes after a war that cost too much. The kind that presses down on your chest and makes you wonder if survival was the wrong ending. But we'd done it. We'd cracked their simulation, injected pain into perfection, and in doing so, made ourselves the most feared anomaly in the universe. We weren't just human anymore. We were the reminder. The last line in a forgotten algorithm that said, "Do not allow this to evolve again." The hollow forge began retracting its ring, folding its energy conduits inward like a sleeping beast. Its glow faded from obsidian white to a dull crimson heartbeat. Still alive. Still watching. But no longer needed. Subject Zero's last transmission came 2 hours after the final builder signal went dark. "The system is broken, and I am broken with it. I was made to protect what could not protect itself. Now I am what no one should ever become." He severed his last connection, burned himself out of the hollow net. We don't know if he survived. We don't even know if survival was possible for something like him. But part of me thinks he's still out there, somewhere in the folds between builder data streams and corrupted AI archives. Not living, just listening, waiting to be needed again. Earth tried to breathe again. But what do you do after you kill your gods? What does a species become after it's seen the end of creation and didn't flinch? We didn't celebrate, not really. The hollow veterans returned in silence. Some were barely recognizable, physically altered by builder tech, mentally fractured by layers of simulation memories. A few refused to reintegrate, choosing to stay isolated in the outer colonies, far from the influence of neural command centers. And I couldn't blame them. We had carried something no human was meant to carry: the guilt of victory. The Council didn't come back. They didn't try. Their fleets scattered during the first phase of the Builder War and never regrouped. Some former Council worlds began forming coalitions, local governance structures. Some tried to contact Earth. We responded to none of them, not out of arrogance, but because we didn't know what to say. We weren't the same anymore. We weren't ready to lead the galaxy, and we weren't sure we deserved to. 2 months after the final strike, I was called to the Forge again. Not for a mission, for an answer. Director Rylan met me near the edge of the Forge's spine, a place called the Obsidian Deck, where old mission logs flickered in vertical data walls like silent tombstones. He looked tired. Older than before, not physically. Soul deep, like a man who had finally outlived his purpose. "You came," he said. "I had to," I said. He nodded, like that was the only answer that made sense anymore. "We're shutting the Holo Protocol down," he said. "Not deleting, not hiding, just putting it to sleep." I didn't argue. We both knew it couldn't keep going. Too many minds were lost to it. Too many memories inserted into souls that couldn't carry them. Earth had won the war, but not without cost. "We infected the Builders," I said. "And now what?" "That's the question," Rylan replied. "We broke the ceiling, the simulation. But the floor beneath us isn't stable either." "You think there's something worse out there?" He didn't answer immediately, but his silence was enough. "The Forge will stay," he said finally. "Dormant, a sentinel. If the Builders ever return, or worse, something replaces them, it'll wake." "And us?" I asked. "You rest." He handed me a data drive. A blank one. "Make your own story now. For the first time in our history, no one's scripting us. Not the Council, not the Builders, not the ghosts of old wars." I took the drive. And I left. I spent the next year on Mars, not rebuilding, not training, just writing, trying to remember what it felt like to be human without war humming under every heartbeat. I watched the Holo soldiers fade back into the world. Some became teachers. Some returned to their families, though most of us didn't have any left. Some vanished. One, Ramos, took a cryo ship into deep space, left a message before departure. If there's a second Earth out there, I want to see it before I die. I hope he found something. The galaxy didn't come begging, but it watched, and slowly, carefully, it began to mimic Earth's way. Not the weapons, not the Forge, the Defiance. Species that had been silent for centuries found their voice. Civilizations once ruled by doctrine began writing new codes. The galaxy stopped looking for gods and started listening to each other again. We hadn't taught them peace. We'd taught them that pain is real, and it can either shape you or swallow you. Earth had chosen to shape it. Now they had the same choice. 5 years later, I returned to Earth. The Holo Monument still stood. Not statues, not names, just black pylons with silent cores. If you touched one, it showed you one moment from the Holo War, but not glory. Sacrifice. That was the point. No parades, no medals, just memories, raw and honest. I stood in front of the one marked KRAY for a long time. He was the reason I survived the Citadel strike, the reason the final virus was uploaded. I touched the pylon and saw his face. No words, just that crooked, broken smile. Then darkness again. He was gone, but not forgotten. None of us were. I live near the Atlantic now. What's left of it? The coastlines changed during the Forge's orbital adjustments, and the water's a bit black around the edges. Still beautiful, in its own haunted way. I walk every morning, sometimes with others, sometimes alone. The war still echoes in my mind, sometimes at night, sometimes in the wind. But it doesn't control me anymore. We stared into the eye of the makers and didn't blink. We tore out the heart of a machine that wanted to cleanse the galaxy. And we didn't become them. We didn't let the power rot us. We broke the cycle. Maybe not forever, but long enough to matter. And when the stars flicker now, I don't wonder what's out there. I just whisper to the dark, if you come for Earth again, bring more than gods.